What's up, everyone? Welcome to This Day in Philly Sports History for April 4th, 2023. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery, and I think the Phillies are officially broken. The first two games you could say, hey, they gave up. The pitching let them down. Sunday night, they just couldn't get a hit in a timely fashion. They had the hits. They just left a lot of guys on base. Yesterday, it was just brutal from start to finish. Base running mistakes, errors, just pitching, like whatever. So they're officially broken. I don't necessarily still think it's quite time to panic, but if we go through these first 10 games and they're like 2-8, then I think it's officially time to panic. Yes, it's April, but they always say you can't win a pennant in April, but you certainly can lose it. So you don't want to dig too big of a hole. But we'll see how they go. It's still relatively early, but they need to bounce back tonight or at least win one of these games against the Yankees. Because if you come home 0-6, it's going to get ugly. All right, so standings check for the Flyers, still firmly in that 26th spot. Sixers take on the Celtics tonight. They are basically looking to win one more game to clinch the third seed. They are officially 2 games behind. I think they're 3 games behind Boston. So I don't think it's feasible for them to catch them. But I think the key now is just finishing out the season healthy and just winning one more game to clinch that third spot. All right, it is Tuesday. Time for a little bit of positivity and motivation. And today, I forget where I even heard this quote, but every obstacle is an opportunity. And I like that because it's very easy sometimes to just fold and under the pressure of whatever, something comes up, it's like, and I can't do it, and we give up. But it gives you the opportunity then to say, okay, let's pivot, and how can we use this to our advantage? So I really like looking at that. Every obstacle is an opportunity. It doesn't matter whether it's a mental, physical, something out of your control. You just need to, it's easy to give up. I guess that's the thing. Like, it's very, very easy to let those obstacles slow you down and just throw in the towel. But each of them present an opportunity to get better, an opportunity to move forward, maybe not in the direction you were heading, but just continue moving toward whatever your goal is. So I like that. So as you go through today, keep that in the back of your mind. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Hopefully, maybe the Phillies can use that to their advantage. The obstacle right now is they're playing like absolute dog shit. But that's a little Tuesday positivity and motivation for you. All right, so we're going to go back today to 1941. Now, pay attention to this because I had to read this and research this, and it took me a while to sort of sort through this. So, on this date, April 4th, 1941, 2 franchises in the NFL traded cities, and that was the Steelers and the Eagles. So you might be wondering, Here we go. So Alexis Thompson, who was a business guy from New York, his parents had a ton of money. I don't know whether they had died or something. Somehow he came into a lot of money and was looking to buy an NFL team. And he went to Art Rooney Sr., offered to buy the Pittsburgh franchise, which I wasn't quite sure. There was conflicting reports on this, but majority of them said they were already the Steelers by this point. At one point, they were the Pirates. But again, that's kind of irrelevant to the story. I don't want to digress. But so this guy, Alexis Thompson, offered to buy the Pittsburgh NFL franchise from Art Rooney Sr. for $160,000. Now, doesn't seem like a lot. Keep in mind it's 1941. Also keep in mind that the NFL was not as lucrative as it was now. A lot of these guys had loans out. They were financing things and just sort of, it was in its infancy, hoping that at this point in 1941, the league wasn't even 10 years old. So just more of an investment, and Rooney didn't have the money necessarily at the time. So $160,000 is a lot. He also realized that World War II was on the horizon. I think it was later that winter when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, they got the United States in. So he realized that a lot of these guys and the players and resources that they were pouring in would end up going to the war effort. So he agreed. But then instead of having that money sort of as a nest egg, he reinvested it. And his buddy, Bert Bell, who was the owner of the Eagles at the time, was looking to sell a stake of his franchise. At that point, he was involved with some of the political aspect of the NFL. He actually became commissioner at one point. He may have been commissioner at this point. Actually, no, I don't think he could have because he was an owner. Anyway, so he bought half of the Eagles. So Art Rooney Sr. and Bert Bell had split ownership of the Eagles. This guy, Alexis Thompson, owned the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, throw a little twist in there. Thompson had always wanted to move whatever franchise he bought to Boston because he lived in New York and he wanted to have a team as close as possible to where he lived. So, already two teams in New York, can't have a third, so Boston was the next logical choice. And once he agreed, everybody knew, Art Rooney knew he was going to do that, but once it got out, once the sell hit, the NFL didn't really take too kindly to that. And then you throw in the fact that Bert Bell and Art Rooney wanted to make the Eagles franchise a Pennsylvania super team where they split their games in Pittsburgh and split their games in Philly. And the league's like, no, we can't have a team owning a whole state that as big as Pennsylvania. At least with the New York teams, they played in relatively close proximity. But they weren't happy about it. The whole Thompson deal, they were like, no, we don't want a team in Boston because we've already had two NFL franchises in Boston, and they both failed. They didn't like like I said, they didn't like the home state idea that Bell and Rooney had come up. And then Rooney started having second thoughts. He's a Pittsburgh guy, kind of almost seller's remorse, like, ugh, what did I do here? So both groups, knowing that the NFL wasn't happy about it, they approached each other and said, what can we do as far as a compromise here? So they decided to trade franchises. All right, both of them own a group. Thompson owns the Pittsburgh team. Bell and Rooney own the Philadelphia team, so they decided to swap. So basically, Thompson would bring the entire Pittsburgh organization, including the players, to Philly, because obviously Philly is just as close, probably a little bit further to New York than as Boston. Kept the Eagles' name, records, the whole history of the team is the same, but basically uprooted the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, plopped it in Pittsburgh. So Bell and Rooney then took the Philadelphia Eagles organization, players, everything, took them, plopped them in Pittsburgh. They kept the Steelers' name, history, and all that. So all the names stayed the same. Everything was, the records and everything, it's just basically the Steelers, everybody that worked for the Steelers from top to bottom went to Philly. Everybody who worked for the Eagles top to bottom went to Pittsburgh. Following that, very confusing. So the two owners traded cities, essentially. Now, throw a little bit of a wrench into that, which is, I think, kind of funny. Ironically, the corporation that Bell and Art Rooney came up with was named the Philadelphia Football Club Incorporation. So the ownership group in Pittsburgh was the Philadelphia Football Club Incorporation. Eventually, they did change the name. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then throw even more irony into this. The Steelers and the Eagles 2 years later merged during World War II because neither team had enough players to form the Steagles and ended up having the Pennsylvania Super Team for that one season. So, to recap, Art Rooney sold the Steelers to Alexis Thompson. Alexis Thompson wanted to move them to Boston to be closer to where he lived in New York. Meanwhile, Art Rooney took that money, bought half of the Eagles from Bert Bell, who then decided they were going to make it the Pennsylvania Eagles. The NFL said, not so fast, my friend. And basically, the two sides worked out an agreement that essentially the Pittsburgh organization moved to Philly, The Philly organization moved to Pittsburgh. Everybody's happy. Now, I know what you're thinking. And because of the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles themselves did not move from Philadelphia, all the records, we're not Steelers fans here. We are Eagles fans. However, starting in 1941, that season, those players, basically they traded everybody. So the Eagles got the Steelers and the Steelers got the Eagles. There will be a quiz. But that all happened on this day, April 4th, 1941. Don't hear something like that every day. All right. Now that that's all sorted out, hopefully, let's look at today's Eagles draft pick spotlight. And today we're going to look at one of the best to ever do it. Jerome Brown, the kid from Brooksville, Florida. The Miami Hurricane. He was the number 9 overall pick in 1987. Though his career was short, only 5 years, he had 29 and a half sacks, 10 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions. He was a two-time All-Pro, 2-time Pro Bowler back when it meant something. He's in the Eagles Hall of Fame. His number 99 is retired by the Eagles. Kind of unexpectedly, Reggie and those guys did that sort of on their own, but forever we're glad they did. He was on the Eagles' 75th anniversary team. He was tragically killed in a car accident in the spring of 1992. It might have been later in the summer. I forget the exact date. But cut short in the prime of his career. And I've told the story a lot of times where I actually got to meet him the day I got my Reggie White autograph. And we had to walk off the stage past him. And I wasn't going to neither of us, my friend Rob, who's listening. What's up, brother? Neither of us we weren't going to pass up the opportunity. And he famously said to us, like, next year, number 12 is going to be healthy, talking about the 92 season. We're going to win the whole thing. It's going to be our year. Because that 91 team, that defense was just downright nasty. In my opinion, I will go to my grave saying this, the best defense in the history of the NFL. And had they had somebody with half of ability at quarterback, they would have probably made a Super Bowl run that year. But I do think this is one of those up there. We talked on the Back to the Future about Randall's knee. We talked about different things that happened in the 93 season when things didn't really kind of work out the way they wanted. But to me, this is one of those ones, and I have not gotten to it. I mean, we did the Fog Bowl too. That was the other one. But I haven't gotten to this because I don't know where to go with this. I think this changed the entire complexion of that team. I think it's a possibility if Jerome didn't die, maybe Reggie does come back and stay and keep that defense together. Because I think if Reggie stays, you don't have Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons and those guys all leaving town as well. And I think Jerome Brown, they loved him for whatever reason. I know he was supposed to be a good leader in the locker room and this, that, and the other. But for whatever reason, Reggie was the leader of that team, but they all talk so highly of Jerome. So I feel like maybe we have an episode coming up on that. But Jerome Brown, number 9 overall pick in 1987. On this day in 1941, the Eagles and Steelers essentially traded cities. And remember, every obstacle is an opportunity. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Tuesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.